Thanksgiving is upon us, and that means it's time to stop our complaining and our worrying and to set aside our anger against our neighbor just because he tried to ruin the country forever by supporting the most corrupt political hack ever to sell an economically crippling and politically enslaving platform of eternal misery that any idiot could have seen was a looming disaster for anything and everything we hold dear. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, we're setting aside our anger at that gormless schmuck and taking some time to think about all the things we're grateful for. For me, this Thanksgiving, as I kneel to say my prayers in the very place where I lost consciousness the night before, I'll be saying a special thanks that I was born and raised in the greatest country on the face of the earth and only moved here after that unfortunate incident with my 15-year-old cousin Amalia, who told me I better emigrate before her Uncle Farouk, until her Uncle Farouk calmed down. Sorry about that. I will get through the rest of this. I'll also be saying thanks that I live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, where men are men more often than not, and women are probably women, though you might want to double check before you do anything involving leather pants and lotion. This Thanksgiving, I'll be thankful that I have enough to eat, and I'll remember that I want to share that bounty with the hungry children around the world, though not as much as I want the new Xbox One, because Gears of 4 looks absolutely amazing, so maybe I'll help the hungry children of the world nearer to Christmas, when I'll probably feel a little more guilty because of all that stuff about the baby Jesus, although I bet if the baby Jesus were here, he'd want the new Xbox too, especially after he saw the previews for Gears of War 4. Another thing I'll be thankful for this year is the presidency of Barack Obama, because through his leadership and his intelligence and his personal decency, he fundamentally transformed this country into a place where a Democrat couldn't get elected street sweeper if street sweeper were an elected position, in which case a Democrat would probably be suited to the job and still couldn't get elected. And finally, this Thanksgiving, I want to give a special thanks to all of you, my audience, because you make this show possible by watching and listening instead of getting a job or entering that work release program the warden keeps telling you about, or finally completing rehab so that your wife can come back to you without having to worry about waking up in the middle of the night to find you standing over her bed with an axe in your hands and a sad expression on your face. It's people like you who keep this show and many of our finer correctional facilities in business. So happy Thanksgiving to you all, and remember, if you're going to drink and drive, keep your eyes shut because you don't want to see what's going to happen next. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan. And this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, ipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hooray!
Oh, God, it's been a while. I was on a roll, you know. I must have gotten through like 4 or 5 of those without cracking up. Reset the clock to 0. All right, we're here finally. And it's Mailbag Day. Woohoo! Yay, it's Mailbag Day. All your questions answers are guaranteed 100% correct. And we have our special Andrew Klavan Show sign. I have my hat with the buckle on. I always wondered if they wore their buckles on their hat, did their pants fall down? It's just, I don't, just a little history question for you all right? So here's the thing that I have learned over this season, over this political season. Here's the thing I've learned about politics. What I've learned about politics is nobody learns anything. Everybody just does exactly the same thing over and over and over again. So if people, like, you look back, and now the Democrats are sort of saying, oh, you know, we were hysterical about Mitt Romney. We were hysterical about John McCain. But now we see Donald Trump and we're hysterical, you know? And it never occurs to them that they're just hysterical. That's all there is to it, you know? It's them. On the other side, on our side, you know, before the election, the day before the election, my wife was making some remark about how obviously Hillary Clinton was going to win. And I said to her, you know, I must be the dumbest person in America because I'm the only person I know who doesn't know what's going to happen. You know, I said, I think Hillary Clinton's going to win. Everybody keeps telling me that, but I don't know that's going to happen because it's such a weird year, you know. So now we have this Trump presidency, and everybody's hysterical. People are hysterical on the left because, he's a Nazi or whatever. Steve Bannon is eating Jews in his spare time. And people are hysterical on the right because everything he does that smacks of not being an orthodox right-winger, which he's obviously not. We knew that already. They say, oh, my God, now he's going to do this and all this. I must be the dumbest guy in America because I am the only person who cannot tell what this guy is going to do because his words don't mean anything, this was one of my complaints about him along the way, was that he says things and then, yeah, I said that, but we're not going to do it. So yesterday, he goes and meets with the New York Times, which, first of all, he said he wasn't going to do, right? We were laughing about this because he sent out a tweet saying, oh, the failing New York Times. I'm not going to meet with the failing New York Times. Forget the failing. Then he went and met with the failing New York Times. So, and he's been lambasting them this whole time about their liars and they're so unfair, very unfair, very unfair. So Maggie Haberman, who was one of their Times correspondents, works. This is, by the way, we're talking about the former newspaper, the New York Times, right? Just for those of you who don't remember when there used to be a newspaper called the New York Times. Maggie Haberman, who is one of the correspondents who covered Trump, she says he came and it was all friendly. She gave this interview to CNN. This is the first Haberman cut.
It was a very cordial meeting. Look, he started out defensive. His arms were crossed very tightly as he delivered a pretty calm in tone diatribe against our coverage, said that he thought that of all the papers that we had been the most unfair, that it was very tough, that we were the toughest, and then said, and this is what surprised me, that he believed that having a good relationship with us would make governing easier for him in terms of what he would like to do.
And so all of a sudden he's friendly. He calls the newspaper a great, great American jewel, a world jewel. This is according to the story in the Times. What happened to the failing New York Times? Suddenly it's a world jewel. I mean, I wonder, does it bother all the people, like those Nazis we watched yesterday, going, "Hail victory! Hail Trump! Hail!" What does he even believe? Why? It's one thing. I get that they're crazy Nazis. I get that. The guy's talking about. I love the part where that guy was. What was his name? Richard Spencer. He's talking about the Sun people. We're the Sun people. In our blood is victory. It's like 10,000 years of civilization. Then this guy's acting like he lives in a jungle. Yes, we are Sun people. That's why we are better than blacks. I could just see some black college professor, thinking that, what the hell is this man talking about, the Sun people? He sounded like a primitive. So what are they so happy about? Nobody knows what this guy is going to do. So now, first of all, play Trump talking, but this is before the election, at the debate. This is what Trump says he's going to do to Hillary Clinton if he wins.
If I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it. And we're going to have a special prosecutor. When I speak, I go out and speak. The people of this country are furious. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious. There has never been anything like this, where emails and you get a subpoena. You get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails. And then you acid wash them, or bleach them, as you would say, a very expensive process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed for doing 1/5 of what you've done. And it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Okay. So now here's Maggie Haberman and what happened. They asked him, this is the first question she says she asked him. This is cut 10.
I began actually with that question at the session and asked him to clarify if he was talking about the emails and the Clinton Foundation. He was talking about both in terms of backing away from an investigation. He made clear that he recognized there is a limit to, what power there is in the White House. In fact, the president is supposed to have nothing to do with this in terms of the Department of Justice. It's supposed to be independent, which was always the criticism of the FBI investigation into Clinton. Was his and others' argument was this must have been politicized. He said that he thinks that she has suffered enough, that she has been through, I'm paraphrasing here, but that she has been through too much. This was a brutal campaign. And then said that the Clinton Foundation, some say, has done good work, which is a little bit different than the, it's a scam line that we heard from him and Rudy Giuliani for most of the final weeks of the campaign.
Okay, so now that's off the table. And as Trump himself said, and this was kind of underreported, I think, they kind of made it sound, even the New York Times was kind of making fun of Trump for saying this because, of course, the Justice Department is supposed to be independent and make their decisions independently, and the Attorney General should make this decision. But, of course, it never bothered the New York Times when Loretta Lynch was sitting on a plane with Bill Clinton while they were investigating Hillary. That wasn't a big deal. But okay, so he himself says he doesn't have the right to make this decision, but this is the way he feels. And Kellyanne Conway, his spokeswoman, says this is a signal he's sending. This is on Morning Joe.
I think when the president-elect, who's also the head of your party now, Joe, tells you before he's even inaugurated he doesn't wish to pursue these charges, it sends a very strong message, tone and content to the members. And I think Hillary Clinton still has to face the fact that a majority of Americans don't find her to be honest or trustworthy. But if Donald Trump can help her heal, then perhaps that's a good thing. Look, I think he's thinking of many different things as he prepares to become the president of the United States. And things that sound like the campaign aren't among them.
That's an amazing thing to say, though. He's thinking about many things as he prepares to become president of the United States, and things that sound like the campaign aren't among them. So things that he promised you, things that the crowds, remember those massive crowds shouting, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. Now, don't get me wrong. I think this is a good thing. I don't think he should prosecute Hillary Clinton. I mean, play Krauthammer. Krauthammer explains why.
I think it's the right thing. Procedurally, not quite, but this is the equivalent of him saying, issuing a pardon. And there are a lot of people who are saying, but what about justice here? Well, the point of the pardon power, which is always rather odd in any constitution, is to allow political expediency or, if you like, reasons of state to trump justice. Obviously, if you're going to issue a pardon, you're going around justice, but you're saying some things for the country are more important, like the Nixon pardon. He might have been guilty, he never was tried, but it was done so that the country wouldn't have to suffer that long national nightmare anymore. And it was a right thing to do, which I think many people today who objected at the time recognize. I think it's right to do it. You put that behind us. Yes, there are probably offenses which are prosecutable. Maybe she would be convicted, but that's not what we want to do. We do not want national political opponents putting each other in jail. So even though procedurally he's not supposed to say this, because he's not the one who would decide whether there would be a special prosecutor, it's the equivalent of saying, when I'm sworn in, I would issue a pardon. And that's, I think, the right thing to do.
So I agree with this, and I agree. You know, Gerald Ford essentially ended his political career, lost the election basically on the basis of giving a pardon to Richard Nixon. But you're right. In a country that prides itself on the peaceful transfer of power, you don't put your political opponents in jail unless they're out there, you know, shooting people or whatever. And you certainly don't go out of your way to prosecute them. And again, it's not Trump's decision, or shouldn't be Trump's decision. But it's just the easy way that the promises get thrown away. That I just wonder, because look, I'm a reluctant Trump supporter, and by the way, I'm still really happy I voted for Donald Trump. I think we dodged a bullet. I really do. I think we dodged a bullet. I think having the corrupt Democrat machine that Obama constructed out of the IRS and the Justice Department and all the rest, having that taken over by someone who is inherently money corrupt, like Hillary Clinton, would have been a disaster. I think this political correctness thing is a disaster. I think identity politics is a disaster. I think the Army has been transformed into a social experiment and needs to get back to the business of killing people, which is what our Army is meant to do, breaking stuff and killing people. You know, all those things I think Donald Trump will help us do. But doesn't it bother these guys who are so passionate about Trump? Doesn't it bother him when he just changes his mind, when they're out there screaming, lock her up, and then it's like, not so much. I just wonder about it. I mean, it's what your word means. And that, in a way, you know, the Hillary Clinton thing was the least of it, because here's Maggie Haberman, this correspondent for the New York Times. Here she is saying a couple of other things that he says. This is her on the big news.
I think two things. I think that him sort of retreating from some of the most extreme positions he had taken, and again, by retreating, I'm still not quite clear where he is on some of them, but on climate change, he allowed for the possibility, said he thinks there is some connectivity, was his word, between humans and climate change. That's very different than what he had said. You know, he had this tweet many years ago, or not that many, but a number of years ago, about how climate change was some kind of a hoax. And he, suggested that he was open to the Paris Accords. He was a little more muted on that. He also basically said, yes, I'm still at my business. I'm still doing things, and declared that it's not possible for the president to have a conflict of interest, just because anything could be a conflict of interest. It's a pretty breathtaking statement. I mean, he said, and he is correct, that we have never had a situation with an incoming president with as sprawling a set of business entanglements as he has. It doesn't mean that the real estate holdings are vast or that the empire is vast, as I have seen one critic talk about it on Twitter, but it does mean there are a lot of different complications. He used during the campaign the phrase blind trust. He kept saying, I'm going to put in a blind trust and my children will run it. Those two things are mutually exclusive.
Well, a couple of things on that, and we'll have the mailbag coming up, but we have to say goodbye to our friends on Facebook and YouTube. Come on over to the Daily Wire and hear the rest. And if you're a subscriber, you can ask questions even in real time.